As our world continues to evolve and grow, the amount of plastic also grows. Around 10% of plastic produced each year ends up in our oceans. Researchers predict that by 2025, the ratio of plastic to fish will be 1 to 3, and in 2050, the ratio will be 1 to 1, or even more plastic to fish. Plastic litter can cause $13 billion of damage worldwide each year. And removing microplastics is very expensive from the ocean. It would cost an estimated $489 million to remove microplastics from just 1% of the Northwest Pacific. Humans are exposed to risks from ingesting fish that have consumed microplastics. And most of the fish in our oceans have consumed microplastics, seeing as that plastic is the most abundant type of marine debris. And this is in comparison to wood, metal, glass, rubber, paper, and even clothing.
Microplastics are found in a range of habitats all over the world. They were first found in the environment in 1970. There are two types of microplastics, primary and secondary. Primary are produced as microplastics and include things such as paint and oil drilling. Secondary microplastics start out as larger fragments and are broken down into the microplastic size.
Microplastics are in all marine habitats, from the sea surface, water column, benthos, estuaries, beaches, and aquaculture, as well as the deep sea. But how do they get there? Land-based sources of plastic waste contribute to 80% of plastic in the marine ecosystems. These are everyday plastics waste that is not disposed of properly and carried via rivers, wind currents, and other environmental factors to our oceans. Even our laundry produces synthetic microplastic fibers, which are carried out to sea. Unlike their bigger counterpart, macroplastics, microplastics and nanoplastics are not trapped in wastewater treatment plants. Some microplastics also start in the ocean on ships and oil rigs and are thrown overboard, thus ending up in our marine environments.
Microplastics are created in a variety of ways. Plastics contain synthetic polymers and chemicals, which make them extremely durable and highly resistant to degradation. But they do eventually degrade, due to processes such as weathering. Photodegradation also breaks them down by ultraviolet radiation, which breaks down chemical bonds by oxidation. Plastics are never completely gone. They get down to a microplastic level and are described as powdery fragments.
So how do microplastics end up in our food? Bivalves are the most commonly affected marine organisms by microplastics. They are found in the gills of crabs and blue mussels. Mussels and crabs, along with other species such as fish, cannot differentiate between microplastics and natural prey such as plankton. We see microplastics in around 30% of individual fish species. These are directly taken in by fish and end up on our plates later down the line. Microplastics can also be found in our tap water. Our ingestion of plastics through foods such as fish and mussels can lead to health effects down the line.
Because microplastics are so small, they are easily ingested by marine life such as corals, phytoplankton, and zooplankton. Microplastics can be ingested and contaminate organisms in many different ways. Planktons absorb microplastics through filter feeding. Both filter and suspension feeders are unable to tell the difference between food and microplastics. In addition to this, fish are attracted to microplastics because of their beautiful colors and buoyancy, which makes them an easy target. They are also mistaken for fish's natural prey.
The discovery of microplastics in our ocean raises into question, why are microplastics bad? Microplastics have been found to dysregulate the immune system of mammals, birds, and fish. They are a threat because they are non-covalently bound to polymer products and slowly migrate into the environment. It can be exposed to animals through skin, food intake, and absorption through gills. Chronic exposure to microplastics can cause long-term damage to biological systems. Microplastics contain phthalate, typically found in PVC and mainly used as a plasticizer, i.e., substances added to plastics to increase their flexibility, transparency, durability, and longevity. They can affect immune cells that modulate lipid metabolism, immune development, and inflammation. This substance can also activate these cells and lead to an overexpression of the BLIMP1 gene, which leads to fewer plasma cells. Changes in the immune gene expression in fish were most prominent in the anterior kidney, which is where new immune cells are generated. Stuff like this can cause extreme biological repercussions, all caused by exposure to microplastics. On a non-cellular level, microplastics can provide a rafting surface for non-native species to travel on, thus introducing them to new habitats. This can cause extreme repercussions across the board. Next, we will talk about how microplastics can biologically change organisms. Due to the accumulation of microplastics in cells and tissues, organisms can develop chronic effects. In the case of corals, they cannot digest the microplastics in plankton, and thus accumulate plastic and make it so the coral can expand. This causes problems because corals provide habitats to 1/3 of fish, which means many habitats are being lost. Microplastics can also cause alterations of chromosomes, which lead to infertility, obesity, and cancer. Cellular effects associated with the intake of microplastics are also associated with immunological responses, neurotoxic effects, and the onset of genotoxicity. Results suggest that microplastics lead to a direct toxic effect of the tissue and can lead to physical damage, along with changes in lipid metabolism and changes in behavior. But the ingestion of microplastics is not always harmful. From ingesting microplastics, fish have evolved to deal with unwanted gastrointestinal material. One of the bad things, though, is that plastics include additives such as colorants, stabilizers, plasticizers, flame retardants, and more. Also, microplastics are known to block internal organs. This can lead to starvation, which leads to reduction in predator avoidance, growth rate, and general fitness. Fish that eat microplastics in plankton have to consume more plankton and microplastic mixture to get the same amount of nutrition compared to a fish that just eats plankton. One study said that the ingestion of microplastics is changing fish metabolism by altering the ratio of triglycerides to cholesterol in the blood serum, as well as the distribution of cholesterol between muscle and liver. Changes also include upregulation of fatty acids and downregulation of amino acids. This all results in biological changes.
As our plastic waste is increasing, the amount of microplastics in our ocean is also increasing. We have already begun to see how this affects marine life on a biological level. Over the past few years, we have seen a rise in groups committed to removing plastics from our oceans. But what can we do as individuals? We can start by stopping the use of single-use plastics such as straws and bags, along with properly disposing of garbage and recycling where needed. Find a local beach cleanup or start your own. But most importantly, educate yourself and others on the negative effects of plastics and the resulting microplastics on the environment. The documentary, A Plastic Ocean, is a good place to start. Because of the increasing exposure of microplastics in our environment, marine animals have felt the effects and adapted to pollution through biological changes. So change your habits in the best interest of the ocean's ecosystem.